This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and the other day a gentleman who I know mainly through Facebook contacted me and said, got something I think you'll like. He said it's an old black and white television, and I'm coming to town Tuesday. If you'd like me to drop it off, I will. So I said thank you, I appreciate it. Now I didn't ask what kind of TV or anything like that. The way I see it, when somebody's giving me something, I don't need to ask a lot of questions. Just take it and say thank you. Well, lo and behold, he actually did what he said he was going to do, which is somewhat rare for this county. And this is what he brought me. It's actually not a black and white set, it's a color set from 2001 with the Sylvania brand on it. Just another example of oh how the mighty have fallen. Back in the 60s, I know at least as far back as the 60s, Sylvania was owned by GTE, and then in 1974 GTE acquired Philco from Ford. So at that point, Philco and Sylvania TVs were basically the same thing, just except for the different brands on the set, one being Philco and the other being Sylvania. And I think the Philco sets were the bargain basement line, so to speak. Well, in 1981 GTE sold off the Sylvania and Philco consumer electronics brands to Knapp, who also owned Magnavox at the time. So now Knapp owned Magnavox, Philco, and Sylvania. And for a few years there, the Sylvania and Philco sets used carryover Sylvania GTE chassis designs. And then I think some of the Magnavox sets also had some Sylvania chassis designs in them, but then eventually they just dropped the older Sylvania designs and went with the Knapp C-Series chassis designs. And then I think it was sometime in the late 90s when Knapp licensed the Sylvania, Philco, and Magnavox brands off on Funai Electric, which, as you know, is pretty much bottom of the barrel stuff. And I've seen these little TVs branded as Sylvania, Magnavox, Philco, Symphonic, Emerson, probably a few other brands that I can't think of at the time, but all the same TV under the hood. Yeah, this one here is from 2001, and by that time I think all 13-inch sets were pretty much bargain basement. One was about as good as the other. He said this one's been sitting under his carport for a while, so it's a little bit dirty. But on a good note, it has the composite AV input jacks on it, so a retro gamer ought to go gaga for this. Oh, excuse me, I'm forgetting what county in Mississippi I'm in. Scratch that. Anywhere else a retro gamer would go gaga goo goo over this, but in this county about the only things people go gaga goo goo over is alcoholic beverages, cell phones. I think they're starting to get off on the medical weed store now. That's starting to be a hot thing. Oh yeah, and tattoos and body piercings. Now, on the latter subject, you know, I would never say anything to anybody. You know, what they do with their body is their business, but that's something I would personally never do. And I can remember a time where about the only time you saw a tattoo on anybody was on a male, and that meant he had either been in prison or was in the military. And now you see even these young girls in their 20s and 30s tattooed from one end to the other, and metal things hanging out of everything they got, plus a few extra hanging in holes that were man-made, so to speak. I just don't get it myself, but hey, well, try not to get off on a rant about that. Let's see what this television does. When I plugged it in, I heard the degaussing coil go thump, these little sets like this, I don't think they degauss every time you turn the set on. It only degausses whenever you plug the TV in, and in order to degauss it, you have to unplug it and let it cool, and then reapply power. Alright, let's see what we got going on here. Okay, did I not hit that power button hard enough? Okay, now I feel high voltage. And it looks like we have a vertical sweep failure. Bright line there and a little bit of raster right here. So let's turn that off before we burn a line in the screen. It's kind of funny I should get this set, because I think the other day our friend 12 Volt Vids got a hold of a Funai built TV VCR combination that had no vertical sweep. I told you to shut off. Shut off. Do I have to unplug you to get you to shut up? Probably going to have to replace some tact switches too in this. But anyway, as I was saying, his set had no vertical deflection, and his was caused by poor solder connections on the vertical output IC. I'm hoping that's what's wrong with this one. Some other common causes are bad capacitors and bad vertical ICs, which the vertical ICs usually fail from capacitors going bad. I hope the IC is not bad in this set, because I don't think I have one if it is. Now, with it having a minor bit of sweep, it's probably either going to be a bad capacitor or a bad solder connection. As you can see, we have dirt dauber crud all up in the holes, so I hope I can get these screws out. I had one a while back that the rodents got up in. The screw was so crusty that I like to never got it out. Well, we have this one with all the crud up in it that's trying my patience. This is not coming out, and I ain't got the patience to deal with it, so it's fixing to get broken. I'm about to solve the vertical deflection problem right on the pavement. He did say I could throw this in the garbage if I wanted to. Alright, I think I finally got it loose. I found a smaller flat bit that would fit in there, and so maybe we can get this thing apart without having to bust it open. Okay, come on, focus. You can see what the head of that screw looks like, so no wonder I was having difficulty getting it out. And as you can see, not much to it, and very filthy on the inside, which is no surprise. And as you can see, we have rust on the teener shield. Alright, there's our vertical IC. I want to look at that and see if those connections are poor. And yeah, they are. Can't really see them that well, but whenever I move this pin, I can tell some wiggling is taking place. So we're going to resolder this and see what happens. Yeah, and looking through the camera, that does look cracked right here. See if I can get me something besides my finger that I can wiggle this with. Yeah, I believe that is cracked. Alright, let's resolder it, and if we're lucky, that'll get our sweep back. Alright, vertical IC is resoldered, as is the horizontal output transistor, the horizontal drive transformer, the chopper transistor, a few other things here, and the CRT socket. Those are all other common areas on these later sets. Now we can look at this and tell this was when the true age of disposable TVs was starting. You know, when you got a set like this, it probably cost, what, $79.95 new, and it's got all these flat pack surface mounted ICs, which is something that the average service shop at the time wasn't set up for, and some never were set up for it, because to buy all the equipment that you would need to do that would not be cost effective when you consider most people wouldn't be willing to pay the parts and labor involved anyway to fix the TV. So alright, let's put it back together and see if we have vertical sweep now. Alright, let's see if we now have vertical sweep. We now have vertical sweep. Excellent. Let's go feed a signal to this and see what it looks like. That raster really doesn't look that impressive. Tube may be well spin in this. Alright, these buttons don't even feel like they're activating anything. So is the little peg broken that activates the switch, or are the switches themselves at fault? These buttons are shot. Let me go look through my junk and see if I can find any tack switches I can put in here. Well, I need 6. I found 5 out of my remains of flat screen TVs that I've junked out. So I guess I'll replace 5 and leave the one that's in the best shape in here. Right here are our donor switches. Like I said, I've got 5 out of 6. The menu button still sort of works on this chassis, so I'll probably leave that one alone since that's a button that won't be used very frequently. Alright, we now have 5 out of the 6 buttons replaced. Let's put it back together and see what it does this time. Alright, by this defaulting to channel 24, which was our over-the-air CBS affiliate back in the analog days, then that tells me this set probably hasn't been used since the analog transmitters were turned off in 2009. Alright, let's see, volume, does that do anything? Well, if it does, it's not showing me anything on the screen. Well, channel's doing something. We go from 24 to 30 to 3 and 14. So, yep, they had all the over-air channels in here, everything besides 11. Alright, let's get a converter box and see if this thing will do anything productive for us. Alright, we have picture, but we have no sound. Volume bar is working now, but we have no sound. What do you want to bet that speaker's shot? Okay, channel set. We're gonna, no, I do not want game mode off. Alright, come on. That thing is very bright. Channel set. Alright, add auto memo. Let's just run it through. We don't need anything but channel 3, and then we'll see about the audio. Like I said, I bet the speaker's shot. Most likely culprit, either the speaker's shot or this earphone jack is shot. And if the earphone jack is shot, we'll just jumper it out, because I really doubt anybody's going to be using earphones with this. I will say this, it's got a bright, sharp picture on it. Alright, let's check the sound situation. Yep, our speaker is wide open. So let's go see if I can find something that I can jake leg and make work. Alright, originally this speaker was slid into this little groove here, and then this had this little plastic piece that screwed down right here. Well, this speaker had a surround on it here that was too thick, and my attempts to remove that surround, I could tell we weren't going in the right direction, so we just wedged the speaker in here, put the screw in right there, and it ain't going nowhere. Alright, now I hope that this will be the end of this. Alright, let's see what happens.
Just give it to me. And Lord. Branzino, but the Meunier reduction. Oh, it's looking at me like I'm personally.
That speaker don't sound that great. This don't get that loud, but guess what? I'm not worrying about it. It's as good as it's going to get.
It's next to the melon spoon.
This was just more of a time waster project anyway. I've got a 27-inch sitting over here that I can't even get 20 bucks for, so why would I care how good this one winds up? You know, between this TV and this crappy converter box that the picture just keeps pixelating on. I bought this box because it's got USB capability, and I had it on my main TV, but I got tired of the picture pixelating and dropping out and acting stupid, so I just took it off and put the old Zenith box back on there. And I just mainly use this box for testing purposes now. Well, the other speaker had a severely rubbing voice coil, so I found this speaker out of another TV that I EOL'd. It looks very much like what you see in a Crosley Cruiser record player, except this speaker is shielded. That's the catch. When you're dealing with a color TV, you can't just install an ordinary speaker because the magnetic field will mess up your purity, so it has to be a shielded speaker where the magnetic field won't affect the purity. So we're going to stick this in here and see if it does any better. Alright, is this any better, worse, or what? I still don't think we've got the volume level we should. Well, it's better than it was. And this is what's considered a personal TV. This is not something that's meant to entertain everybody in the house. So I'm not doing anything else to this. It's as good as it's going to get. And another thing it could be the volume on my box is down. I don't have the remote handy, or I'd check that, but at any rate, TV works. It's loud enough to hear, and I'm not going to do anything else to it but put the back on it and clean it up and try to find it a home, even if I end up just giving it away. Here's this 27-inch Apex set that was free from an estate sale. I hadn't even pulled the back on it, hadn't even wiped the dust off of it, and it works, and I have no intentions of pulling the back off of it. For 20 bucks, you don't get no kind of service comes along with that. If you pay 20 bucks for a TV and it lasts 5 years, that's great. If it lasts 5 minutes, then oh well. And here I am saying that, and just spent all this time wasted on a 13-inch set that ain't worth 5.
What's up? I need your help. I'm in trouble. Horrible trouble.
And you, a nurse? Take 2 aspirin and give 2.
Alright, this set seems to be getting louder than the other one. Well, I would hope it would. I would hope this one would have a more powerful amplifier in it, but I don't think it's... Let me go try to find the remote for this box and see if I can see if the volume's all the way up on that box. Alright, I got this set back together. I could not find the remote for that box to check the volume level of it. That's about par for the course. When I need it, I can't find it. So that's just going to be the way it is.
So maybe get him about 2. That's more my speeds.
Yeah, that's a great day to do it.
Anyway, got about 3 more days to register to win the 70-inch TV. You go to our website, any of our media platforms, you get more entries if you go to YouTube. So only 3 more days to register. We'll be giving away soon. Of course, our sponsors, Magnolia Beverage and Miller Lite. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, the countdown is on. Don't let this pass you by.
That's nice.
Free TV.
Beautiful shot here. Enjoy this nice respite from the heat. Have a great day. We'll see you again.
Yeah, I think the majority of this set's problems were caused by its harsh storage conditions, as in the speaker that had failed and the screw that was so crusty we couldn't get it out. And like I said, I don't think this thing's been used since the analog transmitters were turned off, so it probably developed a vertical sweep problem and just got shoved to the side and neglected for 15 years, and then they gave it to me, and then Well, you saw what I just had to do with it. Resoldered the vertical IC, replaced the tack switches, which I think that was caused by the harsh storage conditions, and the speaker I had to replace. Now, getting off on another subject, not related to TVs, on a local Remember When group, I brought up an old school surgeon who's dead now that did my dad's aneurysm surgery back in 1985. And back then, that's when you went in the hospital and you stayed in the hospital. It wasn't going in today and doing major surgery and getting kicked out tomorrow. I think with Daddy, he went in on a Sunday, spent a number of days in a regular room, then a night or two before surgery they transferred him to ICU, where he had every kind of tube, IV, and monitor known to man connected to him. And then after the surgery, he was in ICU for a few days and then back to a regular room for a while, and then he was discharged. I think altogether he was there about 2.5 weeks. Now back in those days, and let's let the airplane fly over. But back in those days, you went in the hospital and they kept you there until you were well. In today's world, had Dad been alive and went in for aneurysm surgery, he'd probably go in on a Sunday, they'd operate on a Monday and kick him out on a Tuesday. Now I realize medical technology has advanced a great deal over it from what it was nearly 40 years ago, but a lot of that has to do with these insurance companies dictating what they'll pay for and what they won't pay for, and telling the hospitals we'll only pay for a certain number of days, and after that they've got to go. I know we ran into that with my mother during the final 6 weeks of her life. She went in the hospital for gallbladder surgery, and then of course the gallbladder surgery just added insult to injury with her heart condition and COPD. She was in the hospital with that about 2 days, not 2 days, about 10 days with the gallbladder surgery. In my opinion, she was not ready to be discharged, but they let me know in no uncertain terms, we need the bed. So she was discharged to the nursing home for rehab, and then after 4 days, the nursing home called and told me she's got pneumonia, she's not getting any better, and we're sending her back to the hospital. Now, frankly, I think she probably had pneumonia when they discharged her the first time. I don't know that, but I feel like they did. So they discharged her back to the hospital, where she stayed for 2 weeks with a pneumonia, and then they were sending her to a rehab/swing bed facility. Once again, I do not think she was ready to be discharged, but there again, they let me know we need the bed. No, that's actually code for the insurance company won't pay for her to be here any longer, so we need to get somebody in here that we can milk their insurance to the hilt on. And I mentioned that on my post I made, and I offended some doctor's wife. She went into telling me about, you know, her husband will charge $1,500 for to put a patient to sleep, and then the insurance company will only pay a small fraction of that. Well, boo-hoo. I'm sorry, but these doctors, from what I can tell, they're not hurting. Not at all. And then she went on to talk about how they bill the patient for the balance, and 9 times out of 10, the patient never pays. Now, I'm not one to not pay my bills. I've always paid my bills, but when you get sick and then they bill you the ludicrous amounts of money that they charge whatever insurance don't pay, then that could very well be a hardship on the patient that they may not be able to pay. I know years ago my mother was offered a job as a bill collector at the hospital, and she turned it down because She said you go out and buy a stereo or a TV that you know you couldn't afford when you bought it, then that's one thing. When you suddenly get sick and have to be put in the hospital and end up with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of medical debt, and that's not like you going out and buying a TV or stereo or jewelry that you couldn't afford. And she said, no, I'm not going to go after anybody for that.
I never thought I'd ever get indicted for being a lawyer.
So,
District Attorney Willis says she wants to try this case in 6 months, and it
I know whenever I was little, my eye doctor, he was an old school doctor, and we're talking 40 plus years ago.
Defendants in this indictment together? Yes.
My left eye, I had no vision in it. I didn't have it surgically removed until I was in high school. They thought it was not a good idea to have that done earlier on. And that eye sometimes would hurt something fierce. I mean, I would be screaming my head off. My mother would call Dr. East in the middle of the night, and he said, bring him down to my office, I'll meet you down there. He'd do what he had to do to get me patched up, and then my mother would ask him, Dr. East, what I owe you? And sometimes he'd tell her, well, just give me $5, that'll be plenty enough. And then sometimes he'd tell her, you don't owe me anything, you know.
We know this is a very different scenario when it comes to
if you have any more, if he starts hurting again, just call me and we'll get him taken care of. Now, can you see a doctor today doing that? Hell no. If you're not going to get a doctor to come out in the middle of the night when he's not on call to come see about a patient, that ain't going to happen. And if it did happen, you'd be paying for it from now on. Now, I realize a doctor's education is expensive. I realize running a practice is expensive, but like I said, I don't think these doctors are hurting. The ones I know know anything about certainly are not hurting. And when it gets to the point where you're putting money over the betterment of the patient, then I think you need to take a long, hard look at yourself. All right, I'll get out of rant mode now. But yep, we saved the little 13-inch Funai Sylvania. I'll probably either end up keeping it around here or giving it to somebody or whatever. I can't imagine selling it. Like I said, I got that 27-inch one over there that I can't get $20 for. I did sell a 27-inch Emerson a few weeks ago for $20 to a I guess you'd call him a retro gamer, but I don't think those are growing on trees in my area.
President Biden calling the governor from.
Alright, back on the TV. It's been playing for several hours. Obviously it's gotten dark out here. One thing I noticed about this is even though it has composite input jacks on the front, of course it's mono audio, but it's not stereo, but still you could plug a DVD player or video game or whatever into it, but you have to have the remote to access the input. There is no input button on the front of the set, and like on the Orion built sets, the AV input is between the lowest and the highest channel. It's not that way on this set. You have to have the remote to access the input, and I don't even know if the remote sensor is good on this, so I'll occasionally when I'm at rummage sales or wherever, I'll see remotes, and if I see an old universal remote somewhere that I can get for $1 or less, I'll pick it up and try to program it to this set, because I'm just really not going to invest any amount of money in this, because like we've already discussed, me being able to get my money back is probably slim to none. So there we go. This set actually has a real nice picture on it to be a $79 Walmart cheapie, and Funai, that was about as cheap as you could get at the time. But you know, talking about those Apex sets like that 27-inch one, had a family member buy the 23-inch version with the curved screen. Oh, he was just going on about what a good deal he got with it being on sale and with some coupons he already had. Oh, I got that TV for less than $100. And I said, yeah, and it'll be doing good to last out the warranty. Well, it lasted about 12 years before it lost vertical sweep. And by that time, he was ready for a flat screen, so he just gave me the old set. And all that was wrong with it was there was cold solder joints on the vertical IC, and I resoldered it, and TV worked great. And I sold it to a young couple, I think, for 25 bucks. This was, flat screens were already going, but they weren't as cheap as they are now, and you could still sell an occasional CRT set to somebody who couldn't afford a new flat screen. And at that time, I think there were still some analog channels on the cable. So, but now that everything's digital, and now that you can buy a 46-inch TV for 200 bucks, you're going to have a hard time selling something like this to somebody for ordinary TV watching. Maybe an occasional gamer, but not to the average person. On that note, I wonder if these little black plastic crap TVs will one day become collectible. Who knows? I mean, I think back to the 80s and early 90s when color roundy sets were considered garbage that nobody would ever want, and look at how things are today. You've got people today that'll pay hundreds of dollars for a nice roundy, especially if it's in operating condition. And I mean, who knows what these little black plastic crap sets will do in 20 or 30 or 40 years. You might have a whole new group of collectors that grew up with these, and of course 40 years from now there's not going to be many of these left, I don't think. So who knows, they may be worth something one day. It's hard to say. But anyway, so just to recap, bad solder connections on the vertical IC, bad tack switches from improper storage conditions, and a bad speaker from improper storage conditions. But it appears to be working good now. Alright, well first, let's get it off of this crap. This might cause the TV to blow up. But anyway, one last thing, I brought the set in here and connected it to the digital stream box, and our volume seems to be louder now, so that my theory proved true. The audio output on that box is low for whatever reason on that other box.
Plus, our plans include 24/7
See, that's about
roadside assistance,
less than halfway, and it's plenty loud enough.
and free rental cars. Plans from other providers can cost between $100 to $200 per month. But with everything Briggs, you can get the critical
Now,
coverage
it would
that
be
you need.
louder if I put the right speaker in here instead of that Crosley Cruiser type
Your rates
speaker.
will be locked in.
So,
If your vehicle
all I
is
got to
out of
do with this
warranty,
set is find a remote somewhere that'll work it, and try to find it a home, or just hang on to it around here. Sometimes these little small screen sets come in handy for various things, so I don't know what'll happen to it, but at least we saved it from going to the garbage, which is where it would have likely gone had I not taken it.